Hi, David here. Thanks for being with us. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Neale Donald Walsch, author of the Conversations with God series, a body of work that has touched millions of people around the world and has reshaped how we understand our relationship with the divine. On a personal level, the Conversation with God teachings have played a meaningful role in my life, my spiritual development, and the spirit that guides the Samurai Success community. They supported me in remembering who I truly am and in understanding how to create a life from alignment, presence, and love rather than fear or force. Our intention in sharing this conversation is simple: to honor the work, to make this accessible to those who have been encountering it for the first time, and to offer it in service to your journey. So please do yourself a favor, buckle up, get ready for an amazing conversation with truly a spiritual master. I hope you enjoy. Well, good afternoon, Mr. Neale Donald Walsch. What an honor it is to have you on our podcast, sir. It's
Well,
been
it's lovely to be here with you. That's a nice thing for you to say to me. How can I be of service?
great. So I'd like to jump in with some questions if I can. And just, I guess we're coming up on the 30th year anniversary of Conversations with God. Am I accurate with that?
Yes, this is the 30th year.
This is the 30th year. Outstanding. So tell us about your journey with this over the last 30 years.
It's taken 30 years from beginning to end. And let's see, what else can I tell you? It's been 3 decades. There's 365 days in each one of those years. 7 days in every week, 52 weeks a year. Yeah. Um, let's see, what else can I tell you about that journey?
And of all that time, what would you say is the most asked question you get?
How can I have my own conversation with God?
Yes,
And
yes,
can I even do that?
yes.
And of course, I always tell people, no, absolutely not. I'm the only person in the world that God has bestowed this favor upon. But then I usually get a lightning strike from above, and God whispers in my ear, stop kidding around and tell them the truth. So then I have to tell people that all of us can have our own conversation with God whenever we choose. And most people are, all joking aside, David, most people are having their own conversations with God right now. They're simply calling it something else. They may call it an epiphany or a sudden insight or women's intuition, or whatever words they can use to avoid having to say that, yeah, I received a message from the divine.
Mm.
So, but most of us are having conversations with God right now. And so I simply called my experience exactly what I knew it to be, a conversation with God.
And so would it also be used as the creative process is also a conversation with God?
I think that the creative process is a combination of conversation with God and an interaction with our own individual soul,
Mm.
which is an individuation of divinity, in my understanding. So I don't think that God becomes involved in the individual creative moment-to-moment process of every human being on the planet, to say nothing of the other cajillions of sentient beings in the cosmos. So, but I think that God imbues within the framework of every soul in the cosmos the ability to step into the creative process and to create outcomes, experiences, events, circumstances, and expressions in the life of every soul. And the soul uses the body. My understanding is that the soul uses what we call our body and our mind as tools,
Mm.
simply pieces of equipment that allow the soul to move forward with its agenda.
Mm.
That's my understanding based on my conversations.
Nice. With that conversation, what do you say is the biggest challenge that we face as individuals of being able to have our own personalized conversation with God? It's the biggest thing holding us up.
Well, I can't say what the biggest thing is because that would vary from one person to the next. In other words, there's no one size fits all answer to your question. But I do think in a broad, if I could be allowed to speak in broad general terms, what I observe in many people is there's actually a fear involved in having a conversation with God for a very good reason. Most of the world's religions, not all of them, but by far the largest number of the world's religions, teach that if we claim that God is talking directly to us, much less that God is talking through us, that suddenly we are a blasphemer, we are an apostate, we are a heretic. And so rather than run afoul of the rules and regulations of the world's 4,300 religions, and by the way, I didn't make that number up. I'm not kidding around. There are 4,223 religions currently being practiced on the face of the earth. And rather than run afoul of the rules of those religions, most people say, you know what? I don't need to claim or to assert or to imagine that I'm having my own individual conversation with the divine. I'll leave that to, the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury or the chief ulama or the head rabbi, or at least people who have certain credentials. I don't have any credentials. That's the second reason that people generally find it difficult to have the experience that I've had, because they think that one must at least be spiritually evolved at a certain level to have such an experience. So those are the two reasons that I think, in broad general terms, that many people have a difficult time experiencing their own interaction with the divine in the way that I have done.
Mm. How did you get past those fears and that accreditation thing? I know from part of our conversations in the past, it's been through anger. And you just sat down in a place of just wanting to really get to know something and really having a real conversation with whatever it was and sitting down with your notepad. Tell us about that experience.
Well, that's exactly what happened. I was so frustrated with how my life was going. I wound up having to spend a year on the sidewalk. Actually, I was a street person for a year. So I lived on the street, sleeping on the ground in the cold, in the rain, in the snow. And I'm not exaggerating. I was out there during the cold weather months as well as the summer months. I was out there for 2 weeks shy of 1 year because I just didn't have any money. I had run out of my savings and I had no way to get into an apartment because to even get into the smallest studio flat, I had to have the first month's rent, the last month's rent, a security deposit. I mean, I didn't have that kind of money because I was out of work, and for a variety of reasons. In any event, without getting into more of the drama of my life, when I finally did manage to find a part-time job and earn enough money to afford to get into a one-room flat above somebody's garage, I did. I sat down and I wrote a very angry letter to God. What does it take to make life work? What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? I mean, somebody tell me the rules. I'll play this silly game you call life. Just give me the rule book. And by the way, after you tell me the rules, don't change them. Because my experience in life is that the rules of life are changing from year to year, from place to place, from time to time, from culture to culture, from religion to religion. So I couldn't seem to get a sense of consistent responses to the questions that we all ask about life.
Beautiful. I think that some of my own belief systems is that I can only talk to God if I'm in a certain state or certain energy. And I love
Yeah, you
that.
have to be in a certain state, state of Nebraska, only in Nebraska.
Perfect. Well, then I've got to move. So Colorado's working for me pretty good, but Nebraska, all right, we're going. All right. So one of the things that I hear a lot about from people is that they need to forgive things. And CWG has such a different perspective about
No, no, we don't need to forgive things. In fact, we don't need to do anything.
things.
need, I was told in my conversations with God that need is the first illusion of humans, that we don't need to forgive anything. And masters never forgive anything. You know what? When I'm invited to give talks in churches every now and then, I usually open up my conversation by saying, I thought I would share with you folks here today in the church that God will never forgive you for anything at all.
Wow.
And people's eyes cross in the front row, and sometimes people just get up and walk out of the church. I don't need to hear this. What is this guy talking about? But in fact, God will never forgive us for any. My understanding is God told me that she never forgives anybody for anything because he has no need to. There's nothing that we could do or say or be that could possibly hurt or injure or damage or anger or frustrate God in any way, any more than a 2-year-old child could hurt and damage and frustrate and anger you in a way that could make you want to punish the child with everlasting damnation. Or, you wouldn't say to a 2-year-old child who's misbehaving at the dinner table, okay, go to your room for the rest of the year. With a punishment way out of proportion to the offense, even if a punishment was warranted. We understand that's simply not a way to interact with a 2-year-old child that we love. And so God loves us in the same way, with unconditional love. And God's love for us is not transactional. God does not engage into love as a transaction. I will love you and give you what you want if you love me and give me what I want. That's not how small a person God is. God says, no, here's how it works, Neale. I love you no matter what. I love you with pure love that needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return. David, most people can't even love the person on the pillow next to them in that way. Much less can they imagine a God who loves them that way. So begin practicing with the person on the pillow next to you. Simply say to that individual, you know what? I don't love you for what I can get from you. I don't need, expect, require, and certainly don't demand anything from you. I love you because of what I see over there. I love you because of who you are, not because of what I can get from you. If I love you because of what I can get from you, I'm not loving you at all. I'm loving me through you, just using you as a way of loving me. But I don't love you because of what I can get from you. I love you because I clearly see the wonder and the glory of who you are if you give me nothing in return. That's what's called pure love. And that's how God loves us. But most religions teach exactly the opposite. Most of the world's 4,000 religions teach that God loves us if we follow God's commands, if we do as God says we must do in various different ways, including eating certain foods or not eating certain foods, saying certain prayers or not saying certain prayers. In fact, one religion claims that unless you belong to a single religion, you're going to hell. There's actually a religion that teaches it doesn't matter if you're a devout believer in God and a wonderful, caring, generous, forgiving, compassionate person. If you happen to be a Muslim, or happen to be a Buddhist, or happen to be a Jew, or happen to be a Hindu, I'm sorry, you're going to hell. Because there's only one doorway you can enter through to get into the kingdom of heaven. There's a religion that actually teaches that. So I'm so sorry to have to tell people that those religions have made a mistake. They're not deliberately trying to bamboozle people, but they just simply misunderstood what it is that God has been saying to humanity from the beginning of time. God says, I love you. plain and simply, and need nothing in return. My love for you is not a transaction. It's not like a trade deal between nations. You give me what I want, I give you what you want. No, that's not how it works with God. God says, I give you everything that you could possibly desire, seek, and want in your life, and I need nothing in return. Can we believe in a God like, when I was told that, David, when I was given that information in my conversation, the first thing I said is, that sounds almost too good to be true. To which God responded, sweetheart, if God can't be too good to be true, who can?
So beautiful. This year marks the 30th. It's the 30th year of Conversations with God being on this planet, if you will. It's been available to us, I'm sure, for centuries, but just in the way it came through you. What changes have you seen since that material has been here with us?
Well, I've seen, according to my incoming emails and messages of all sorts, I've seen millions of people's lives change.
Mm.
And I think I've seen an awakening, not because of the books that I have brought through, but because of a larger movement that's going on all over the planet. I think there's an awakening happening, David. I think that people are deciding that maybe it's possible that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about who we are. The understanding of which could change everything. So that awakening is a movement that's crossing, as I observe it, the planet from place to place. And we are now seeing the Great Awakening occurring. And that's turning people into a species that no longer seeks alienation as a means of resolving conflict. You know what's sad, David, about our species until this time? We've had armed conflict on this planet for 95% of recorded history. We don't know how to solve our problems without killing each other. David, we actually allow ourselves to kill thousands of people over a borderline dispute. I mean, really? We can't, as civilized adults, simply sit around a table and find a way to resolve our differences, even if we have to find a way to gently compromise? Can't we find a way to disagree agreeably? Must we actually kill people to get our way? Even if we're in the right, even if we think, and of course, most people do think they're in the right, or they wouldn't do that. But even if we think we're in the right, that our point of view is the correct point of view and the only point of view that makes any sense, does that still make it a viable option? A meaningful response to actually kill people? Let me give you one of the greatest contradictions in terms. We claim that killing people on purpose without a reason, murder, so forth, is not okay. So in order to show how not okay it is to kill people on purpose, we kill people on purpose. We call it the death penalty because we claim that God said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. We believe in a God who's so small in her outlook on life that he would actually instruct us to kill people as a response to show them that killing people is not okay. And we fail to see the contradiction. Folks, wake up. There's a better way to be human. There's a better way. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this. I don't think so.
Agreed. Seems to be such a mad rush, a hurry, an insistence, to be able to find this truth and then take that truth and literally shove it down people's throats to get people to listen to the truth that I've found in my life that says this has to be the truth. And if you're not willing to listen to me, then we go and do that killing thing. We're willing to kill just to have you listen to my truth. CWG is really clear about this thing called absolute truth. Could you tell us a little about that?
Yes, of course. CWG says there's no such thing as absolute truth. And when I was told that, I was shocked. I thought, well, surely
Right.
I must have misunderstood what was said to me. But I questioned God about it. I said, did I misunderstand what you just said? God said, no, there is no such thing as absolute truth. Virtually everything that humanity thought at one time was absolutely true has been found to be not true in the absolute sense. I mean, Einstein proved that. He kept on turning over rocks that changed many truths that humanity held about itself, as have other philosophers and scientists as well. So we've come to understand that there is no such thing as absolute truth. There is only what's true for you right here, right now. And you know what's interesting about that, David? Even in my own life, I have changed many of what I thought were my own absolute truths. It's called maturing. It's called evolving. It's time for us, to grow up. It's time for us to stop acting like 2-year-olds at the dinner table. It's time for us to begin to behave like the evolved species that we claim to be. And I think that we're capable of doing that. All we have to do is change our mind about who we are, the purpose of life, and what happens after we leave our body.
One of the most profound things that I have learned in this work is that we're not here to discover or find out who we are. We're actually here to create who we are.
That's my understanding as well. We're here to decide who we are within the framework of the larger understanding that all of us are individuations of divinity. But how we wish to express that, to demonstrate that, how we wish to experience that, is an announcement of who we are as individuals. And that's what's created people like Catherine of Genoa, or Teresa of Avila, or Mother Teresa, or Siddhartha Gautama, or David, or Muhammad, bless his holy name, or others, Jesus and others, who we have declared to be masters. And not just in the distant past, people who are walking the planet in this moment. We are declaring to be spiritual masters, and we want to be like them. And the first step in being like them is to allow ourselves to know that we can be like them. We have the ability, we have all the equipment, we have all the sensitivities, all the awareness that's required to be highly evolved beings. It's just a question of whether we have the commitment to do so. Or if we think, what is life really about? When I was a kid, I thought that life, when I say a kid, I mean when I was 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, when I was a young boy and a young man, I thought that life was about, the formula was simple. Neale, get the job, get the car, get the girl, get the better job, get the better car, get the better girl, get the spouse, and get the office in the corner with your name on the door, and get the building on the corner with your name on the building. Get all the stuff you can get into your life. Get a huge big house, get the children, get the grandchildren, and then finally get the gray hair, get the cruise tickets, get the illness, and get the hell out. And that's what I thought basically was the formula for life. That's what I really thought in simplistic terms was going on here until I had my conversation with God. And she said, Neale, sweetheart, you've misunderstood the whole thing. Your life has nothing to do with the stuff you acquire, what you accumulate, how many friends you have, how many lovers you've enjoyed, how much of anything that you've brought into your life. It's not what your life is about. In fact, Neale, your life has nothing to do with you. Your life is about everyone whose life you touch and the way you touch it. But when you live from that place, you discover that in the universal sense, your life is about you for an elegant reason. There's only one of us in the room. We are all one. Individuated, but not separated. When I understand that we are all one, it suddenly occurs to me, oh, if that's true, then what I do for you, I do for me. And what I fail to do for you, I fail to do for me. Ah, that changes my whole approach to life. But there was a guy walking around the planet about 2,000 years ago who gave us a hint about this. He said, folks, it's really very simple. Do unto others as you would have it done unto you. The golden rule. And then God said to me in conversation with God, I have a better one, even a better one than that. As wonderful as the golden rule is, here's the platinum rule. Platinum being more expensive, more valuable than gold. The platinum rule, do unto others as they would have it done unto them. Treat others as you know they would like to be treated. So long as you do not damage yourself, hurt yourself, or injure yourself, or for that matter, injure or hurt another in the process. Injury, hurt, anger, frustration are never part of any demonstration of divinity. These are only my understandings, David. I could be wrong about all of this. I don't claim to know more than anybody else. But I have listened carefully to what I was told in my conversations with God. And you know what? My 4 words on the subject, it works for me. Matt Lauer interviewed me on the Today Show a few years ago. And we had like they don't have long interviews on the Today Show, but I had about a 6 or 7 minute interview. But at one point, Matt Lauer says to me, Mr. Walsch, we have about 30 seconds left. What do you think is the most important message that God has sent to the world? And I thought to myself, you stinker. You knew you had 30 seconds left and you asked me with 30 seconds left the single most important question of all time? Nice going, buddy. What can I say to this guy in 30 seconds? He says to me, could you put it in one paragraph? We only have about a half a minute. And then it came to me very clearly. So I looked at Matt and I said, Matt, I don't need 30 seconds. I don't even need one paragraph. I can give you God's most important message to the world in 5 words. Matt Lauer looks at me, looks at the camera a bit askance. He says to the camera, well, folks, from the man who claims to be talking to God, here's his idea of God's most important message to the world. Neale? And I turned to the camera and I said, God's most important message to the world in 5 words? You've got me all wrong. Matt Lauer didn't know where to go with that. I said, Matt, if my message is inaccurate, as if it's a mistake, our conversation is over. But if that message is accurate, the conversation about God has just begun.
Wow. Beautiful.
I've written a book called The God Solution that talks a lot about all of this. And it ends with 5 chapters on how we can use the power of metaphysics, which God has given to all of us to use, as a means of expressing ourselves in a wondrous way, and as a means of manifesting what we choose to experience in life. The book is called The God Solution, and I send it in digital form to anybody who asks for it, no charge, free of charge. So if somebody's watching this program right now and would like to get a copy of The God Solution, just drop me an email and say, Neale, I demand that you send me that book immediately. Or you could just say it nicely and say, please send me the book, but I'll send it to you. All kidding aside, I'll be happy to return it to you by return email. Absolutely free. Just ask me for a copy of The God Solution. Send me an email to neale@nealedonaldwalsch.com. But you must spell my name correctly. You know how the internet is. 1 letter out of place. The email doesn't get where you want it to go. So look my name up if you don't have a copy of my book already, one of my books. Or if you have a copy of one or 2 of my books, be sure you spell the name the way it's spelled on the front cover. Neale@nealedonaldwalsch.com, and I'll send you a copy of The God Solution in return.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Very welcome.
Of all the things that you're able to share with people, what would you say is a concept that's most misunderstood by people that maybe you'd like to give some clarity with today?
The concept that God judges, condemns, and punishes people who don't do what God demands. The largest number of the world's religions teaches exactly that God judges, condemns, and punishes people who don't give him what he wants. Now, what's sad about that, David, is because we believe that that's how God behaves, we behave in the same way. Nations behave that way with other nations. People behave that way with other people, even inside of a relationship, of a marriage. People often treat each other in the same way. Why? Because we say, well, hey, what's good enough for God should be good enough for us. I'm only behaving the way God behaves toward us. So if God can be judgmental, condemning, and punishing, I can be judgmental, condemning, and punishing. Therefore, you'd better give me what I want, or you're in big trouble. That's how nations talk to each other. That's how different people from different cultures talk to each other. never seen as much alienation on our planet as I'm seeing these days, David. More alienation than ever before, arising out of a simple, misunderstood idea. Here's the real answer to your question. What's the single most misunderstood concept about life that people hold? The idea of separation. We think we're separate from each other. We think we're separate from all of life. We think we're separate from God. Some people even think that they're separate from themselves in the sense of their ego being separated from the larger part of themselves. So we believe in the idea of separation. Yet God told me in conversations with God, in the first chapter of the first book out of 3,000 pages of dialogue, I was told, Neale, there is only one thing. All things are part of the one thing there is. There is only one thing. You call that one thing divinity. Allah, Brahman, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever word it serves you to use to define that single essence, the essential essence of life. Everything is part of that essential essence. That you are a singular expression of it. So Neale, as you move through your life for the rest of the day, decide, what can I think and say and do that could demonstrate the highest thought I ever had about myself and about the other person with whom I'm now interacting. I think if we all behaved in that way, we would change the world overnight.
We're so waiting for someone else to do that. And the masters have always spoken about this. It starts right here. Just forgotten it.
Gandhi put it perfectly. Be the change you wish to see in the world.
There's a fabulous process that you shared with the group that I was with. It's called the soul logic process, I believe. And it's been transformational with working with people to be able to have them really reconnect with being in a place of victimhood and then really seeing it from that soul's perspective about why that other person may have caused the pain. And I will tell you, it was transformational for me for my relationship with my father. That was very emotional, physical, things like this, truly transformational. Would you share that with us and also maybe one of your experiences with that?
Well, yes, I'd be happy to. The soul logic process is simply a series of questions. Do you believe in God? The person answers yes or no. If the person answers yes, I say, do you believe in such a thing as the human soul? If the person says yes, then I go to the third question. What is, if anything, the relationship between the soul and God? And if people say, which most people do say, well, the soul is, kind of like a child of God, to put it simplistically, an expression of the divine. They say, then let me ask you a fourth question. Can God be victimized in any way? And most people would say, no, God can't be victimized. God is God, the highest power in the universe. I say, then can the soul be victimized in any way if the soul is an expression of the divine? Now that's what I call soul logic. That's why I call it the soul logic process. Most people are stumbling when they ask that question. But, they finally conclude with me, well, maybe, I guess it's true that if the soul is an expression of the divine, simply an individuation of divinity, then the soul can't be victimized any more than God can be victimized. Then I get to the next question. If that's true, Why would the soul experience and create the events and circumstances in life that it has experienced? Not to be victimized, but to be given an opportunity to decide and to declare, to express and to fulfill, to demonstrate, to become who we really are. And then a person might say, well, then, okay, I guess I'll have to forgive my person who did all these wrong things to me. And I say to them, no, understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. All you have to do is understand how it could have been possible for that person to behave the way they did toward you. That doesn't mean you condone it. It doesn't mean you agree with it. It doesn't mean you hope it's repeated, but it does mean you understand, I see. And then we get to decide, will I repeat those behaviors and duplicate them or change everything as I move forward in my own life? And thank the person who behaved that way toward me for showing me what was possible for me to achieve and to experience in my own life by applying the law of opposites. The law of opposites simply says, in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. And when I say that to people in front of an audience, somebody usually gets up and says, what's that supposed to mean? I say, well, let me give you a simple example. What I am is, to use a simple example, I'm 6 feet tall. As it happens, I'm 6 feet tall. I want to do more than simply know that I'm 6 feet tall. I want to experience what it's like to be 6 feet tall. But in the absence of that which is not 6 feet tall, I mean, if every tree, every plant, every flower, every dog, every car, every house, every other person was precisely 6 feet tall, I couldn't experience what it's like to be 6 feet tall. But when that which is not 6 feet tall shows up in my life, now I can know what it's like to be 6 feet tall, to experience 6 foot tallness. Because in the absence of that which I am is not. But in the presence of that which I am not, that which I am becomes possible to experience. Therefore, if you want to experience yourself as the light, to use a metaphor, I am the light, allow yourself to notice and be aware of the darkness. And judge not, and neither condemn. Raise not your fist to heaven, and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. I could, of course, be wrong about all of this. I don't pretend to have the answers for all of humanity. I can only tell you what's worked for me. And all this information I was given in my conversations with God. I had to wait until I was 52 years old to even begin gathering this kind of awareness, consciousness, and understanding. So I hope that people don't have to wait that long.
No, they don't. There's an interesting dynamic concept called the attractor factor. And I'm finding that a lot of folks have confused this a little bit with, I'm attracting every event into my life. I'm responsible for these events. and it really creates a place of judgment. Could you talk to us a little about just share with us about that perspective, the individual ability to attract events and the group dynamic that actually happens with it?
Yes, of course. My understanding is that we do not attract the negative events, or even for that matter, the positive events of our life in the way that people think that we do. It's not, I fell down the stairs when I was about 23 years old, actually. I was carrying my dog downstairs, and I actually tripped and fell down the stairs, and I broke my ankle. Now, in the old days, when I was part of the so-called New Age community, I would have thought, why did I attract that? Why did I create that? God says you create your own reality. Why did I create falling down the steps and dropping the dog and breaking my ankle? Why did I create that? Well, for that matter, why did I create all the negative events in my life? What in the world was going on with me? But God said, Neale, that's not how creation. You do not create the individual experiences of your life. The events and circumstances of all of life are created simultaneously by the collective, by the lot of us. What you create is not the events of your life or the circumstances. What you create is your reaction to it. How you react is what you create. In fact, the word react and create are the same word. Only the C and the R have gotten mixed up where they're supposed to be. Put the letter C at the beginning of the word, and you've got the word create. Put the R at the beginning of the word, and you have the word react. Same letters in a different order. So decide to put the C where it belongs, and you will see who you really are.
So
I could, of course, be wrong about all of this. And I say that not as a point of humor. I insist on saying that throughout my conversations with people because I don't want anyone to think that I think I've got the answers. This is simply what has worked for me. These are the understandings that have changed my life. Don't give your authority away to anyone, but that doesn't mean don't try something out. If it feels good to try something out, try it out. So I do invite people to read books in the Conversations with God series, or grab a copy of the God Solution and give yourself permission to explore possibilities that you may never have explored prior to being exposed to this particular program.
I've always been fascinated by your ability, and I know I'm going to make this a little bit more personal in this one, but you've always had this amazing thing that I've always found that I admire the most is that you've never taken credit for any of this material. Like on stage, I've seen you in hundreds of interviews over my lifetime, and it is the most remarkable thing to watch you where people have wanted to give you credit for this, and you just beautifully turn that back and just being the messenger of things. How do you do that?
By simply telling the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is that if there is wisdom in the book's titled Conversations with God, it's not my wisdom. I was simply given a message that I could share, and I was given an invitation to share that message. But it's not my wisdom that's in those books. All I did was take dictation. All I did was take dictation. And then I asked questions about what I was hearing. How could that be true? Or what about this? Well, yeah, what about that? And I insisted that I get more detailed answers to broad general responses, and that I was given more detailed answers. But all I did, David, was take dictation. Of course, I tell people it's not my wisdom. Of course. I simply passed on a message. But I'll give myself credit for having done that. And I only did it because God told me that I would. I was told in the dialogue, Neale, you will make of this one day a book, and it will be accessed by many. And I thought to myself, yeah, right. I could just see a publisher rushing out to publish a book because a guy up in Oregon claims to be talking to God. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So you know what? I sent a transcript of one of my earlier conversations with God to a publisher on a dare. I mean, I was daring God. Okay, you said it'll be published and accessed by many people. Show me. Prove it. It's not going to happen. But my golly, a few weeks later, I get a call from a publisher. He says, we want to put this book out. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no, it's a great work of fiction. About a guy who has an argument with God.
Right.
And God's answers. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. We're not publishing this as a work of fiction. And the publisher said, Mr. Walsch, are you trying to tell me you think this actually happened to you? I said, of course, that's the whole point. Yes, it happens to me, and it happens to people all over the world all the time. Everyone is having conversations with God. They're simply, as I mentioned earlier, calling it something else. So he said, okay, we'll put it out as a work of nonfiction, but you're not going to find 500 readers because people aren't going to rush to the store to buy a book from a guy who claims to be talking to God. And he was right. They put the book out as a nonfiction book, and he was totally correct. It did not find 500 readers. It found 15 million. Not bragging, just saying. 15 million copies in 37 languages. So I came to a conclusion. When God tells you something, Neale, believe it. So I do.
With so much change and chaos, it feels like going on in our world right now, what's the message that you would like to share with our community of hope, or something about the future that you see differently?
Change is the first step toward transformation. Without change, there is no transformation. So what I would say to give people hope is be grateful for the change, even those changes with which you initially disagree. Because if things stayed the same as they always were, nothing is going to be ever transformed or turn into anything other than what it's always been. So change is the first step toward transformation. There's a book that I wrote about that topic. It's called The Calm Before the Storm. And it talks about exactly what you are now exploring. So, yeah, I welcome change. I welcome even the changes that I am finding that I disagree with. But at least it tells me that we're moving. We're not staying static. And then we get to at least decide, are the changes that are occurring the changes with which we agree? And if there are changes with which we do not agree, can we disagree agreeably? Do our differences have to create divisions? Do our variances have to create violence? Is there some way that we can be proponents without being opponents? And I think that's what change forces us to look at closely. So I welcome change. I wrote a book called When Everything Changes, Change Everything. Change your idea about change itself, change your idea about why change occurs, change your idea about how it's going to change you, and change your idea about how you want the world to change.
So it's not changing the world, it's changing my reaction and response or meaning I'm giving the world or the events that happen. If I want to call this chaos, and I can call it chaos, I'm just going to have a different experience of it. But if I change it and I welcome that change, then it's going to have a very different experience, something I can take on a little differently.
Even if I don't agree with the change, we can welcome not the change itself, but the fact that change is occurring. We are welcoming a process called evolution. And evolution can sometimes be a little bit messy. We might encounter certain policies or certain conditions, certain events, or certain circumstances with which we dramatically but not violently disagree. But our disagreement is an announcement of what it is we would prefer. And when enough people disagree about a thing collectively, those things can be changed. Martin Luther King Jr. proved that. Elizabeth Steinem proved that. Harvey Milk proved that. People throughout human history have proven it. So let's join in the process and become the change we wish to see in the world. I've really enjoyed being here with you, my friend.
Thank you, sir. Truly an honor, and truly thank you for all the amazing work that you've brought through, and truly thank you.
I'm glad to have the opportunity to share with the world what was given to me to share, and I appreciate the opportunity to move through these conversations with you in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Neale. Appreciate your time today.
Bye for now.
Bye. Ah, so good. Ah. You know, when something resonates with you so profoundly, you just can't help but cry. That's where I was for just the last hour of my life. Good stuff. Good stuff. You know, I've been around Neale in person a lot over the last, well, this year, this conversation we've got is celebrating its 30th year. So I've been there since 1996 and way out in the Boy Scout camp of, the YMCA out Estes Park, all the way to over to Oregon, to all the different places in California that I've been to, adventures in here in Colorado. And so I've been around his voice, but it's one of those things where you're asking a question directly, and that voice and that profound knowledge comes to you directly. Like, hey, I'm answering this right here in the right now moment. Like, what is happening here? And it is just really special. Really, really special. I will tell you, there was a lot of things going on for me that I really had to check in with. And when it finally just wouldn't record, you know, and he was his goofy self that he does so beautifully, and just put it at ease, and we just got into the conversation. So I know there's some really wonderful things in there for you to hear. And if you're going to listen to it, then there's a reason that you're going to listen to it. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, this book is that. These books are that for me. And that's why, you know, people ask me all the time, why do you read these all the time? Because that experience happens each and every time I read that. And there's sometimes where I just go, oh yeah, and then boom, it hits you. And I can't describe that feeling of just that excitement about, holy crap, that just answered one of the big questions I've had having for a long period of time. So that's why I do it. If you have had opportunity to be able to see any of Neale's work, and you haven't revisited in a while because life is crazy, go back to it. If you haven't heard about it before, please just know that take it for someone who's lived this stuff for the last 30 years of my life, that it is truly transformational. It's no joke. It will give you such a different perspective about life that I know you're after. If you're listening to this, if you've been listening to anything going along with this, I know that transformation is a big part of your work, and his work, Conversations with God work, just supports it like nothing else I've seen.